Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Todd Blanche, joins us now. Thank you for taking the opportunity, especially on a Friday night.
Of course, Chris.
All right, so let's just tick them off. The idea that the AG doesn't want to respond to the subpoena, so she was trying this as an end around. The question is obvious. If you got nothing to hide, why don't you want to raise your right hand?
Yeah, you're right. If you got nothing to hide, why don't you show up in Congress? Why don't you tell Congress from day one that you'll show up whenever they want you to come, which is exactly what she did on Wednesday night and what I did. What if you tell Congress that any one of you that wants to come meet with me at the Department of Justice, any one of you that wants to come see any single document unredacted, you are welcome to do so. That's how you show transparency, and that's exactly what the Attorney General did. That's exactly what the Department of Justice has been doing. And so this narrative that us voluntarily showing up on Wednesday night to answer any question that anybody had, that was somehow the Attorney General was avoiding something, when you say it out loud like I just did, it doesn't make any sense, Chris.
With a caveat. The caveat is I can say anything I want right now. There's no penalty for me lying. If I raise my hand and it's sworn testimony, now there's a price tag.
Well, that's a completely different issue. If she's asked to testify under oath and raises her hand, that's absolutely what she will do as the law requires. Okay. But that's not what we're talking about, Chris. True. That is not what we're talking about. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about Democrats who for weeks have said, I want to ask the Attorney General Bondi this question. Why won't the Attorney General answer that question? And then we said, ask any question you want. And they got up after a few of them asked questions, and they just stormed out. That is the story.
Yeah, it sounds like
if they really care about what...
Yeah, it sounds like
no,
a stunt.
No, it doesn't sound like a stunt. It is a stunt. It doesn't sound like a stunt. It is a stunt. I mean, there's no other way to look at it.
I try to give people the benefit of their best argument, and some of them have other ones. That's why I say it the way I say it. But let me ask you this. Why did you agree to a closed-door meeting? The last thing we need is closed-door meetings.
Well, that's not true, Chris, because as you know, the Epstein files are filled with personal information about victims that we cannot release to the public and should not. And all those Democrats have said 4 weeks, oh man, the redactions weren't done right. The redactions, I went in there and looked and there was something that shouldn't be redacted. So you want to talk about victims? You want to talk about mistakes that you think that this department made? Let's do it. Ask any question you want and we will answer it. That is exactly what we should have done. Do you think we should have had a meeting open to the public when we're going to talk about concerns they have over redactions and our process?
Oh, well, look, here's my answer, honest answer, yes. And I'll tell you why. And I'm not blaming you for this. And I'm not blaming Pam for this, okay? But I'm blaming MAGA. They made this a boogeyman. They made this about a murder plot and about a human trafficking ring that involved all kinds of high-level people, and everybody knew it, and it had to come out, and Trump would deliver. So that's where this is coming from. This is the law that this president signed, and the criticism is, Todd, you guys are doing more to protect things than the law requires, and what you are protecting are the wrong things. That what got redacted that shouldn't have been hurt survivors, didn't help the cause of transparency.
So look, I mean, trying to blame MAGA for what's happening now is incredible. I mean, that is absolutely completely false. What's happening now is Democrats in Congress and some senators and a few Republicans in Congress, like Massey, are making this their entire existence. That's not MAGA. That's what's happening now. And when you criticize all you want, ask questions all you want, I'm on your show. I'm happy to answer any question you have about redactions. The law required us to redact every single victim name. Not only that, but judges in New York ordered us to redact every name of any woman who said she was a victim of Epstein's crimes. That was not a choice.
Nobody's complaining
about that. That was not us not being transparent. Well, what are you complaining about? You said that there's criticism. What are you complaining about?
Well, criticism is that there were names of people who were hidden that didn't need to be, and that a lot of the stuff you put out is more black than it is white in terms of being able to read things. I mean, we're putting up the pictures now. You're still holding back about half of what you have, and there seem to have been some sneaky attempts to remove things from the president that then you said didn't matter and didn't amount to anything. But then why were they removed and then put back?
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the redactions.
Sure.
You're right. There were criticisms about the redactions. There were many members of Congress who got the materials released and said, oh, they covered up men's names. They then went in and they saw that every single one of those redactions were actually victims. Have you heard a single congressman since that initial week when they were all out there saying we're redacting men's names give you any information about a single potential criminal, individual, famous person, politician, anybody that was redacted inappropriately? The answer to that is no, no, no. So that was something that, and you had people like Kana and Massey actually doxing totally innocent people, putting victims' names in public. And that's what was happening. As for us being cute, let me tell you what happened about that, Chris. And were there mistakes made when we had
I want you to continue your point, Todd.
Please.
I just want to, I understood, I lost you about the Kana point. I thought what he did was he read names of men who were, he found in the files that he mistakenly thought were part of unindicted co-conspirators, but not victims.
That he did do that too. You're absolutely right about that. But he put the name of a woman out in the public who has identified herself as a victim, and he was frustrated because we had redacted her name because a judge ordered us to redact any woman who came forward and identified themselves as a victim. He put that name in public, but he did do the other thing as well. And moreover, going back to your question that we did something cute.
Please.
We had over 500 lawyers reviewing over 6 million pieces of paper. Many of those pages were filled with victims' names. So less than 1%, there were mistakes made. When we learned that there was a mistake either with an over-redaction or an under-redaction, what do you think we should do in that case? We should have those smart lawyers take the document down, address it, fix it, and then put it back up. As of this day, there is not a single document that has been identified as having a mistake that hasn't been addressed and fixed. Period. And yes, were there a handful of mistakes made? Yes, there were, as you would expect with 6 million pages being reviewed. Should we have released a single victim name? No.
But again, I don't think it's about you guys not doing right by the victims or the survivors, except to the extent that you're not championing their cause enough by allowing enough information out that you've gone to extraordinary lengths to go through carefully. Why do the Epstein files get more attention, more manpower, more money thrown at them in terms of controlling what comes out than anything else we've ever seen?
Well, it hasn't. So what's lost in this story is the fact that
it's
every year...
It's not the most lawyers and the most time ever sent on a redaction operation?
Well, on a redaction operation, but that's not what you said. What you said is that why are we spending so much money and time on something like that more than anything else? And the reality is we are spending 10 times the number of lawyers and 10 times the number of man hours protecting our most vulnerable and going after predators federally. We arrested over 7,000 last year, Chris, and you are right. I couldn't agree with you more that we have spent more time on this case than any case that I've been a part of since I became Deputy Attorney General, and that's because there was a law that was passed by Congress, signed by the President, that ordered us to do so. That's not something we would normally do. When we said in August we weren't allowed to release any more materials, that's because the law didn't allow us to. We went to judges in New York and we said, hey, can we release more materials? And they said, no, you can't. The law doesn't allow you to. So what happened? Congress changed the law, and we were allowed to do it, and we did it. And just to address the complaint that we're keeping more things from the American public than we're releasing, we have made every single redaction available to members of Congress to look at, to hold us to account. You think we messed up, you think we over-redacted, go in there and tell us what we did wrong, and we have had virtually no complaints, and that's from Democrats, that's from Republicans, and there were some complaints, and when complaints were identified, no problem. We will address it and we will fix it. So the narrative, putting things up on your screen that show big chunks of redactions, that's what happens in sex trafficking cases. That's what happens when women who were abused and tell their stories to the FBI come in and tell them there are large pages that are redacted, as the law requires.
How can it be that so many women came in with stories of being trafficked and that it was all only about one man?
I mean, it's a great question. I will tell you that over a dozen prosecutors investigated this case for over a decade. Hundreds of victims were interviewed. Hundreds of victims were interviewed by prosecutors who do this for a living. And there is no effort that we have found, or that anybody else has found, that any line prosecutor was protecting somebody. As a matter of fact, the prosecutor, if you look at the various administrations that had control of this, if there was an effort to protect, we would know. We would know. You have somebody like, and just to put a finer point on it, you have somebody like a representative from New York, Dan Goldman. He was a federal prosecutor in New York when the prosecutions were going on. And then he worked for the House. He worked for Schiff when the second prosecution was going on. And then he was a member of Congress. So he, of all men, would know if there was some sort of cover-up. Now, what's he doing now? He's got a selfie stick complaining about the Attorney General and the release of the Epstein files. That's a joke. That's a joke. I mean, you have somebody who was an AUSA in the SDNY, a member, an investigator for the House, and now a congressman. And now in 2025 and 2026, suddenly he's got a selfie stick complaining. That's not right.
But listen, you're assuming he's acting in bad faith. He says, or all of them
he
say,
is acting in
that
bad
the survivors.
faith. Yes, I am.
All right, well, let's test it, Todd. Let's test the idea, because he says.
Let's do it.
You know, I mean, I'm not here to defend Dan. I mean, that's what he does for a living. What I'm saying is, when those women raise their hand in the back of the hearing room and say, they're people who should be coming out, and I don't want to offer up the name because these kind of people are going to come after me, and the government doesn't even want to mess with them. Why would I? But they're not telling you about people who should have known, and they're raising their hands and saying, nobody ever talked to me. It fuels suspicion that if they're not satisfied, you must be doing something wrong.
Totally. That's exactly right. And let me tell you something. It's false. Any victim or any lawyer for any victim can talk to the Department of Justice or the FBI at any time. Director Patel, Attorney General Bondi, myself, and also local prosecutors and local FBI agents across this country will never ever say no to a victim who comes forward. And we have said that for the past year. And so, yes, you had women stand up in a hearing. Yes, you had that. Those women or their lawyers can go to the FBI, and like I said, hundreds have, and we will never not investigate a claim brought by a woman against a sex trafficker. Never. And there's no statute of limitations if the woman was underage when the crimes occurred. And so the narrative that somehow we are not investigating or didn't do enough, ask anybody that says that, Chris. Did you go to the FBI? Have you tried? Have you contacted the Department of Justice? And if they have, and they say that I hung up on them, or they say the FBI didn't let them in, you better believe I will deal with that immediately. And so will the Attorney General, and so will Director Patel. But it does not happen, and it did not happen.
What happened with Kash Patel between what he used to say on the podcasts and what he seems to believe about the files now?
Well, I don't think it's what he seems to believe. He's testified under oath about it. So I think it's not surprising that there was a lot of information about the Epstein files that was out there, but not necessarily part of the record that we knew. You know,
he said he knew.
There was a lot, like you said.
He said he knew there was a list. Bongino said he had inside sources that this was a murder and a cover-up. That's not information.
I don't know anything about Bongino's sources that he says he had. I don't know anything about what Kash Patel knew or didn't know before he was a director of the FBI.
How do you not know?
But what
You're the deputy AG. This guy was number 2 at the FBI. He's called the Podfather. How are you not aware of what he was saying?
You're asking me how I don't know what sources he's claiming he had from before he was in the FBI?
No, I'm saying what happened.
All I can tell you is what we know now.
They said they knew they were empowered in part because of this mission. But then what did they discover? Well, you know, they were never clear about it. I don't know what happened.
Chris, they were crystal clear about it. Bongino sent out multiple public communications about what he learned that's different than what he knew before he went in there. So did Director Patel. They have been, it's not right to say they haven't talked about that. They have talked about that repeatedly, and they have said, we looked at the files, we have done a thorough investigation both into his death and into the files themselves. And that is their education, and what they're saying now is based on the information that they have learned since coming into the FBI. And so asking me to judge them for comments they made years ago is not something I will do. We will talk about the facts that we know now.
Counselor, listen, you're better at this than I am. I'm not trying to litigate this with you. You're obviously very skilled at what you're doing. I'm not getting you. I don't want you to judge them. I'm just confused by the discrepancy, so I asked you about it. Similarly, I can't say to my audience, yeah, clearly I've seen criminal implications and allegations against the president that should have been pursued and they weren't, and it's wrong. I can't say it. I haven't seen it. The question is, why haven't I seen it? Then they put out these interviews of someone, the AG comes out and says, incredible, well, not the AG, the press secretary comes out and says this woman was a liar with a criminal past and there was nothing there. Help me understand something for the audience, Todd. This is my last thing because I get asked about this all the time. What did they do with what that young woman said to them happened? I'm not saying you, because it didn't happen on your watch, but why are we supposed to believe she wasn't credible, there was nothing to it, and yet they interviewed her multiple times?
Listen, that is a great question, not only about that woman, but about any witness that comes forward. And it's an important question, and I don't in any way I don't begrudge you for asking it. And here's the answer. They investigated. So these are trained men and women of FBI. Some of them were state troopers, and they investigated. And they tested. Because if you're going to charge somebody with a crime, if you're going to take away somebody's liberty, if you're going to try to see if a crime took place, especially years ago, you have to test it. So somebody comes in and says and says something that happened. You listen to them, and then you test it. And I wasn't there, you're right, and neither was any of the folks that are part of this administration now. But we do see is that there was and by the way, it's all in the files now. Anybody can look at it and question the decisions that the agents made at the time when they determined it wasn't credible. But if folks want to say that's not true, it was credible, go ahead and say it. The information's in the files for everybody to read. But they made a decision at the time that there was nothing to move forward on. And like I said, Chris, and this is a sad fact about these types of cases, the prosecutors, the career line prosecutors in Florida and in New York, talked to hundreds of victims. They did. And does that mean that every one of them provided evidence that they could act on? Unfortunately, no. I mean, that's the result. That's what happens.
Here's the last point of curiosity, and I appreciate you taking the opportunity. And by the way, it's an open invitation to you guys. You're always welcome to come on here and make the case. The audience deserves it. You interview Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't care what prison she's in. You guys make arrangements with people to talk to you all the time. This is not new to me. I'm not going to make it something new. But how can it be that there is anything to know here and that Ghislaine Maxwell isn't going to offer it up when her life is in the balance? The only way she gets out is if the president decides to pardon her, which I can't believe he would do, or she gives you something bigger than she was in the mix.
Yeah.
Did she suggest anything like that to you?
Chris, you're right, and that's why when the opportunity presented itself to talk to her, nobody had ever talked to her before. So the reason you could not be more right. Here she's facing 20 years in prison. If she has something, this is when she will give it up. And I went down there myself with an FBI agent and with witnesses, of course, and talked to her for a day and a half. And every word that I asked her is recorded and available to the public, and every word that she's answered is a transcript, has been created of every single word, and everybody in this country can read what I asked and what she said, and she didn't offer evidence of that you're talking about that we could act on and that we could then potentially bring a case against somebody that hadn't been prosecuted yet. And the reasons why I went there is exactly what you said, Chris, because you had this feeling amongst Americans that there was something unfinished, that there was somebody out there that needed to be held accountable. And the one woman that was there that we had access to was Ms. Maxwell. And so I went down and talked to her, and she didn't get a benefit didn't get moved to a cushy prison because she talked to me. The BOP makes decisions all the time about security. There were a number of threats against her because of me, because people learned that I was going there. And so the BOP, the Department of Justice, has to keep our prisoners safe like everybody else. And so it's not like we gave her a benefit for what she said or didn't say. But like I said, we will always investigate any crime that's presented to us, especially against underage women, and that remains as true today as it has been. And that's not just me and the Attorney General. That's hopefully every single person at the Department of Justice.
Well, look, I hope more comes out. I think the more that comes out, the better. I think trust is at a low, and it is only cured by transparency. But I will tell my audience this. You were clearly trying in that interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, because the way I read some of the notes from it, you seemed to be trying to get her to say that she knew me, by the way. And I was like, where is this line of question coming from? So you were definitely taking your swings, Todd. I'll give you that much.
Can I answer myself?
I just hope you're taking them at the right people.
Can I defend myself?
No,
Can I
please
defend
do.
myself?
Please do.
What I did, I didn't want anybody to say that I left anybody off, and so we did research on all the people that had claimed they knew Ms. Maxwell, that they knew Epstein, and so you'll see that I asked about, I think, over 100 people, including obviously Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, and I don't remember asking about you, but I assure you, the only reason I did is because somewhere along the way,
you even told her who I was.
Okay.
She was like, he has a brother, and you were like, yep. How about him? So you definitely had curiosity about that. I'll give you that. Todd Blanche, thank you very much for coming on to make the case. I appreciate you doing it. The invitation is open.
Thank you, Chris. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.